Literally, I wish I would have hit live freaking 40 seconds earlier. Hashtag Nation, welcome once again to the. I mean, who cares? It's hashtag sports. You can find us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All of our episodes go to iTunes and Spotify. Tonight's show is sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Paul, go ahead.
With the Bills' third round pick, they draft, wouldn't you know it, a former captain, special teams ace from Tulane. Here, is anybody surprised? Right? Like when you look at the resume, is that, oh, color me shocked. You know, like, oh, what a surprise. We draft a captain. Does he have an Eagle Scout badge too?
Did he wrestle in high school? Right up. Know that?
He wrestled in high school.
Did he wrestle?
You know what? It's so funny you say that, Ryan, because I was looking as the draft was playing out. I saw Trenton Simpson from Clemson. I saw his dad did 17 tours for the I believe it was the Marines, or he did 17 tours in a branch of the Army. I was like, oh, that's the guy. That's all I needed to see. It's like, yep, that's the guy.
Sold.
Yeah, and Baltimore snatched him up. But here, are you expecting to get a starter in the third round? I think Buffalo looked at this and said, we're just going to take a guy that can contribute tomorrow, right? And this is a guy that can contribute tomorrow on special teams, I guess, right? He's coverage monster.
Yeah, he's, that 4.49 really hops off the page for your linebacker at 230. Like that is, Ryan was saying it earlier. I mean, athletic freak. I didn't tell you guys this. The pick comes in. I get 2 text messages, one from Paul, one from Ryan, and then one from Joe. Joe goes, team captain.
Yeah, there we go.
Paul or Ryan goes, he goes, this guy is a freak. And then just Paul goes, reach.
Yeah, that's it.
And I'm dying right now. I can't even broadcast this.
You know what? He totally different type of profile than Torrance, right? Torrance is like, he's a big guy, but he's not that super athletic type player that Buffalo always seems to gravitate towards. This is different, right? This guy is an absolute athletic freak. But again, you get that third round compromise, right? The size isn't ideal from where you're coming from. But I mean, you're just coming from a player, 6'5", 250, you know, like.
Yeah. I guess a lot of people are putting in the chat that Bean said he's going to start.
They have a type, right? Like they have a type, and it's undersized linebackers that are more athletic than they should be at their size. I mean, they've already got Milano, an all-pro. They drafted Bernard last year and Dorian Williams this year, and they're basically the same guy. And it's interesting to see that they're, I don't know. Is it an indictment on Bernard that they went out and drafted a guy that's the exact same draft profile as him after signing AJ Klein? Like, are you really going to trot out AJ Klein out there, or was the intention to draft to run Bernard out? And they said, let's go get another guy that's just like him and see who wins the job. Well, so, I mean, I don't take this as a endorsement of Terrell Bernard. I think that they're concerned that he can't do the job. So they went out and got a guy that they think profile wise can do it, because that's why they drafted Bernard. Profile wise, they thought he could do it, and just something hasn't clicked with him. That's the concern that I have, is that they're already washing their hands of a third round pick from last year.
Yeah, I don't think they have the patience for it anymore. I don't think they're like waiting for guys to develop. Like, you look at all 3 of these guys that they've drafted in the first 3 rounds, you could see these guys starting every Sunday for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, realistically, because of the fact, I mean, obviously Williams would be a stretch to start, but you look at it and, Paul always talks about time. McDermott talks about time on task. But if you want to look at it in this respect, what are we coming at this from? Are the Bills, they're a 4-3 team. But when are they ever going to trot out 3 linebackers? Let's just talk about that for a second. They're never going to do that.
How often are they going to trot out 2 now?
No, I don't think they will. I think the first situation they have, and I talked with Joe about this off the camera, A couple of years ago when Milano went down, who was filling in spot duty at that outside linebacker role? It wasn't an outside linebacker. You had Poyer dropping down in the box and taking care of that side of the field. Okay. Yeah. Are there certain packages where they're going to have Poyer on the field and Rapp on the field? Yeah, Rapp will be down in the box and Poyer will be playing over top. I understand that. What drafting a guy like Williams does for your team is you get more linebacker depth, Paul. I know you love that. Number two, what you do is you open up, just like you do with Kincaid on the offensive side of the ball, as far as the offensive sets that you're able to run. I think on the defensive side, you're able to, because we're talking about a squad that's been together for like 4 years now. There are tells in this defense. So if you bring in these different guys and give offenses different looks, I think you can throw some teams off this year and possibly make a run. That's what I'm thinking this pick says to me.
Yeah, but and I'm just curious Joe's perspective on this first, right? Like this pick, if you're planning on starting this linebacker in the middle of your defense, or even, at will, and Milano steps inside, the fact of the matter is you're going to be weak against the run. And if you're Buffalo, do you care about that? Right? Like you were weak against the run before. This doesn't help that. Do you really care about that? Is that not something you're concerned about because your plan is to put up 48 points every game?
I mean, what I think and what Bean and them are showing us are two totally different things. Like, yes, we're going to suck against the run again. Like that's just it. And in my opinion, I just don't see us getting better against the run in these situations. Even if Von Miller comes back, Von Miller is not here to help us with the running attack. That's not what he's here for. So I don't know. I have no idea what the plan is here, to be honest with you. Now, yes, do we plan to put up 40, every day, every game? Absolutely we do. And can we do it? Absolutely we can. But this doesn't make me feel any more confident in our run defense. I mean, we saw us get torn up by quite a few running backs last year. So I'm not happy with this pick. I just want to look back at our second round pick and be happy. So
I think it's a requirement for any linebacker the Bills draft to have dreads. I think that's like just a requirement because it's part of concussion protocol. It helps with concussions. I think there might be a study. I don't know.
I mean, I was so I really wanted Overshawn, which was the pick before us.
Yeah.
At linebacker. Like I loved him, looking at him. But like Ryan said earlier, like that wouldn't fit Brendan Bean's mold of a linebacker anyway. So would he have taken him anyhow? I don't know. So.
Mm-hmm.
When does Milano get his dreads though? It's I'm wondering.
Ryan, in the presser with Bean, I saw in the chat people were saying that Dorian Williams was going to be starting at linebacker. Did Bean say that, or was he talking about Dorian Williams contributing or starting on special teams?
He said special teams in his press conference. So I mean, he's gonna compete for he's gonna compete with Bernard for time on the field, and whoever doesn't win that job, they're going to wind up on special teams. I think we've seen that as a track record, and I think if you want to take the offense defense philosophy of we're going to go out and just throw the ball all over the field and we're going to put up 35, and you want to try to do that and match us blow for blow on the ground, good luck. I mean, if that's the philosophy they want to roll with, I mean, Kansas City has pulled how many teams out of a run-first offense because they come in with the game plan of we're just going to run and control the clock, and all of a sudden Kansas City goes down and scores, twice heading into halftime, and now it's a 2-score game. You come out of halftime and you're throwing the ball. Maybe that's the approach that Buffalo is going to try to do, and they're going to say, short yardage and goal line situations, we come in with heavy with AJ Klein, we bring Rapp in to play defense, and both Bernard and Williams come off the field. Maybe that's the approach, so yeah. I think they add a lot of versatility. But the other thing that has been a struggle is coverage from the linebacker position in pass coverage. That's a huge loss of Edmonds because he was better than a lot of people gave him credit for in the passing game. And AJ Klein is inept isn't even a word that would be too kind to call him inept. He's downright abysmal in pass coverage. So
Dorian in
helps. Yeah.
And Dorian in 2022 allowed less than 200 yards in coverage all season, right? So
that's a big deal for a linebacker.
He's a very good coverage linebacker, right? He's a very good coverage linebacker. But we talked about it before. McDermott's a big guy on time on task. Don't expect him to contribute on the defense. Like, that's just, if you're not a first round pick, you don't start for this team. That's just the way that it is. Like, how many times do we see a second, third round, fourth round pick? Like, oh God, Boogie, we didn't see till what, week 7? Like, it's just, it's not a thing for the Bills to start guys that aren't drafted in the first round. But maybe we're overthinking this a little.
Paul, I brought this up in the last stream, so I want to get your take on it. Didn't McDermott have an interview last season about how the draft has changed and how we need to find players who are ready to start right away? Do you think that was just lip service, or was there something to that? Because this pick tells me it was lip service, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think you kind of have to say that when you're going to be paying your quarterback, $250 million.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, it's not that the draft has changed. It's your needs have changed and you don't have the ability to wait anymore,
Yeah. And that's what it is, right? Like we can do an entire show, and I've done one with Drew on Rock Power Report. I go off on diatribes. Like, I am not yet sold on McDermott. I mean, I'm just candidly open and honest. Like, so, I mean, at a certain point, like the shtick of character building, leader of men, that kind of stuff only will take you so far. At a certain point, you've got to break this cycle of, I don't play rookies because they're rookies and they don't know what they're doing. And you've got to put guys out there. You saw what happened with Khalil Shakir. They refused to play him all season long because he was a rookie. And then he comes in late in the season, he has a huge drop in what turns into a big loss for the team because he doesn't have the reps. He doesn't have the experience. He gets out there in a big moment, ball hits him right in the chest and he drops it. And that's what happens when you don't get these guys experience. I mean, Mario, to a very much lesser extent, but we see that like at the Division III level when you and I do the football games, right? Like the coaching staff has a focused effort on playing their backups early in the season so that when it comes to late season bowl game situations, if these guys are thrust into a starting position or thrust into some type of a significant role, they're ready for it because they've played in these games before.
Yeah, they have something to rely on.
This cutesy approach to your rookies has to stop. You're drafting these guys to be impactful. You're not drafting them to be impactful 3 years from now. You're drafting them to be impactful now because your window is now. Your window is not 3 years from now when Diggs is over the hill and he's retiring and you're trying to figure out on the offensive side of the ball who's going to be the wide receiver. You've got to get guys that can play now.
Be careful. Diggs is on the Larry Fitzgerald plan. He's playing till he's 60. Okay, you just pump the brakes a little bit.
Well, I think there's a lot of
mindset is what got Anthony Richardson drafted in the top 5. That everybody can do the thing that only the one guy does, right?
I think there's a lot of credence to what both of you guys are saying is the fact that, Paul brings up a good point. Now, when you weren't paying your quarterback all this money, you can go out and get veterans and then draft these linebackers or draft these players behind them to try to get them time on task in order to take over for when the veterans leave. And I understand that. And then, but now when you're paying your quarterback and you don't have the money to go out in free agency and pick up these guys, you have to draft guys that have to be impactful. And I think even to Joe's point, saying that McDermott was probably saying it like, we don't have the money to go get the veterans that have time on task already. So we have to draft guys and give them time on task. So I think there may be a change in the philosophy of the Buffalo Bills coming in. I mean, I've said all along, give me 53 convicts. I'll win the Super Bowl every year. I don't care about these good guys. I know you're trying to build your culture. When you're starting out your program, I can understand that. However, your culture is firmly established at One Bills Drive with all these veterans that I've already walked the gauntlet with you. So now they're going to be the guys that have to police guys. If you want to bring in a guy that's maybe questionable as far as off the field stuff, you can do that now because you've already set up your program. Now, bringing that back full circle, trying to score 35 points a game doesn't seem unreasonable, but is that a lot of pressure being put onto Ken Dorsey now? We're like, hey, you got to score early and often for this defense to work, for us to play complementary football, or else it's not going to work. Does that put more pressure on Dorsey and or Allen or both walking into 2023?
I mean, you play in a conference with Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert, Mike McDaniel, like the pressure's there, whether you want it or not. I mean, I don't care how good your defense is. we've seen what a top 5 defense that the Bills can trot out on the field has had done to it by Patrick Mahomes. I mean, 2 seasons ago, the 13 seconds game, that was a top 5 legitimate defense, and he torched them. So, I mean, the pressure's there. And if you don't feel it, and if this is what you need to have that sense of pressure, that you're in the wrong job if you're Dorsey.
And I think Joe could attest to this probably more than I, because poor Joe calls the games for us every single week. But the thing that struck me most throughout last season, when you look at those elite level teams offensively, like, you know, the Bengals and the Chiefs, is they have an identity, right? And they force their will upon other teams. I never really felt Buffalo had an identity last year besides just Josh Allen is better than your defense, right? That was the identity. And I think when you get skill position players out there that bring talents that this team didn't have last year, then perhaps you could start to craft an identity. But crafting an identity entering the 4th, 5th year of this quarterback is, you're behind the 8 ball. You're already behind, you know, and you can talk about the talents of Josh Allen all you want, but, you know, the lack of offensive identity is going to kill you.
Well, but I would to counterpoint that, I would say 2 years ago, this offense did show signs of an identity. I think the lack of identity last year came from Ken Dorsey's ability, the fact that he's just behind the ears. So I think that, I'm hoping at least, that this year we have more of Allen and Dorsey on the same page, you know, and they get more consistency, and maybe getting that tight end in the first round is proof that, you know, Ken Dorsey is going to go for his identity, whatever that is. And this is him setting the tone for what will be his offense.
Well,
yeah, but the offensive identity, to Paul's point, the offensive identity can't be, when the chips are down, just put the ball in Allen's hands and let him go do what he does, which is better than anybody else.
Right.
What Dorsey struggled with last year was he had something that worked, and he would immediately go away from it. It was almost like he was worried that the other team would figure it out the next time he ran the play, and it would you know, turn into a problem, instead of what you see in Andy Reid, which is he's just going to run the same play over and over again until you stop it. And then once you stop it, then he'll revisit. But Dorsey was almost like preemptively taking himself out of schemes and plays that worked, almost like he was afraid to go to it too many times because it would get figured out. But yeah, I mean, to Paul's point, you've got to figure out what your identity is beyond, we have a unicorn at the quarterback position, and he's just going to go win us football games if we need him to.
Right. And, you know, I'm glad to see the Bills make an investment in the offensive line, because I think that's been a long-term struggle, right? Is bend that offensive line. You just get a collection of veterans, and there doesn't ever seem to be any continuity the last 2 years specifically. And, you know, to get an investment in the offensive line in a 2nd-round pick, that's great, right? And now to try and fix some of the coverage issues at linebacker, and at least put the right type of player in your system, that's great. And now you have to work on developing that, you know. But from where you go from here, right? The Bills obviously are absent a 4th-round pick. The truth of the matter is, you're just looking at, you know, you still don't have much of a safety option, because you've got 2 guys that are basically Medicare eligible in NFL world, right? And then Rapp. So Buffalo, I still think Buffalo's probably looking safety. You know, that they always are looking for corners. That always seems to be something that they do. Like, there's other needs that Buffalo has, and I think Buffalo's in a different position now than they have been in previous seasons, where in that undrafted free agent game, they're a destination, right? So there's guys that were those fringe 6th, 7th round picks. They're making phone calls in the 6th round, like, hey, listen, we like you. You're on the board for us. But if we don't take you, let's, you know, we want to bring you in. So just know that, and then just wait for our call, right? And I think that carries more weight than it did previously. And Buffalo has to start committing to those players, right? They would do that in previous seasons, but they would keep the veteran. They've got to stop doing that. You can't afford to do it anymore. You have to commit to those younger players.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, they've got to commit at the defensive tackle position. I mean, they've got to figure that out too. I mean, you don't have. I think they've got one guy next year that's under contract. I think we talked about it last night. Maybe it was after the stream, but one guy that's under contract beyond next season. You've got to figure that out, and it's probably not going to be Oliver. I don't think you can justify that spend on one guy at that position. And you know, it starts probably in the 5th round, 6th round, where you've got to start taking defensive tackles and trying to develop some this season.
Now I got a question for you guys. Would this pick have been different had the Bills had a 4th round pick? Do you think this guy's still off the board if the Bills have a 4th round pick?
No, because I think he trades the 4th round pick to move up in the 3rd. I think Bean moves up. I mean, it's the 2nd year in a row that he's moved pick 130 to move up. So I don't think he has any affinity for that pick.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Ryan there, right? When you're looking at your board, right? Maybe you just see that as the valley, right? Like it's good enough to get a player, but not good enough to get the value for the player, right? So you'd rather take that asset and trade it in for something a little bit better. So I think it's theory, right? It's draft theory. And kudos to him if he thinks he figured something out, right? No, I'll be honest with you, right? The run on linebackers before Buffalo probably tied their hands a little bit here. Although this guy fits everything that Buffalo would want.
Yeah.
And Buffalo would typically draft. The fact of the matter is there was a bit of run on linebackers, and that was clearly a position I need.
Well, and didn't Bean say in his press conference the first rounds went to best player available? So is he admitting in the 3rd round we just said we're looking for a team captain? Like, is that way he's just admitting to?
Well, Taiwan Jones is no longer here.
Yeah, he did say the first 2 rounds that they just trusted their board. And they just took the 2 top guys that were there. So
what's that mean for this?
Well, I mean, Ryan brought up a great point last night when he was talking about it. They said, is it best player available if you had to trade up for him? I thought that was a great question. I mean, is it? I mean, no, that's a guy you're going for. And let's not mistake ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. The last time Brandon Bean decided to trade up or trade a pick and get a receiving threat in the 1st round, it was Stephon Diggs. So, I mean, let's hopefully this works out.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's telling how much they liked Kincaid too, because not only was he worth trading up for in their minds, but he was worth turning away the Titans, who by all accounts were aggressively trying to get into the bottom of the 1st round to take Will Levis so that they could get that 5th year option for him.
Yeah.
And Buffalo said, we like Kincaid enough to say no to the trade down and additional assets in a draft where you could argue they needed additional assets. We're going to give up an asset and go get a guy. And I mean, I think it's pretty telling how much they like Kincaid. And I hope that translates into we're going to use him a lot. Because if not, I think it's a massive failure that they turned down, an opportunity to pick up additional assets to go get him.
Well, Ryan had mentioned something that I want to go back to where you said that you weren't totally sure on McDermott. If there was ever a season to really learn who Sean McDermott is, it's this season because there's no defensive coordinator, right? Like this is it. Yeah. This is the season. And I will be honest with you guys, McDermott's history as far as a defensive coordinator is far from aggressive, right? Like it is just a slow anaconda, a slow burn, right? Like the roster that you've seen, his defensive systems are typically the same, right? It's just a slow burn the whole game.
Yeah. The concern that more so the concern that I have with McDermott is he has a track record and has shown a history of not being able to learn from the previous season's mistakes. He's still not great at clock management. He's still not great at challenges. He's still not great at these little situational type of things that as a defensive coordinator, you should be keyed in on. I mean, again, I go back to, deciding factors of games, and it's 3rd and 3 and their corners are playing 14 yards off the ball. Like that's stuff that shouldn't happen. No, especially shouldn't happen 2 years in a row in playoff win or go home games.
Right. Especially when your head coach and defensive coordinator were defensive backs. That's
so I mean, so that's kind of where that's where that whole leader of men kind of falls empty for me, because it's like leaders learn from errors and they put their guys in the right positions to be successful. And it just doesn't feel like that he's done that. So this is the year. I mean, to me, it's hyperbolic to say it, but there's a twinge of honesty. I mean, I say the same thing about Budenholzer, right, in the NBA, who lost to the 8th seed with Giannis, right? Like at a certain point, the head coach has to fall on a sword beyond just saying, I'm going to fall on a sword. He needs to get fired. I mean, at a certain point, you run out of excuses for why these things don't happen. 13 seconds, you get the doors blown off at home against the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs in back-to-back years. Like, it's not Allen's fault. You can't blame him because you're tied to him for the next 7 years, 10 years, however long he wants to be a Bill. So whose fault is it? You got rid of Frazier. I mean, So that's where I am on McDermott. I mean, this is the season for me. If they don't make the Super Bowl this year, I think as an ownership group, you have to take a long, hard look at your head coach position.
All right, I want to get to this comment real quick. DF Forever. I've been saying all offseason that we are in for major scheme changes on both sides of the ball. I don't think he's wrong. Kind of got slammed for it, not by you guys. We don't really slam anybody, do we, guys? I'm not sure we do. I don't even know if we're not that active to slam anybody. But the point is, I've always had questions, and Paul can attest to this, about McDermott's when it comes to management situations within the game. And I've always and you go back to who are the two guys that he learned from? Couldn't have been polar opposites other than Andy Reid and Riverboat Ron. Like he is so torn probably internally on what to do on a certain thing. It was, well, Ron did this and then Andy did this and both of them are wrong. So what the hell do I do? So it might be very tough. I know DF, I know you didn't say us, but like I wanted to address Spin's comment in there. He goes, because he says he's tired of the Buffalo Bills wasting draft picks on linebackers and then picking them the next year. So I just wanted to go through. I mean, they picked Tremaine Edmonds in 2018. Then they picked Voshon Joseph in the 5th round. Whoops. And then they didn't pick a linebacker for 2 years.
Yeah.
Until last year when they picked Terrell Bernard. And maybe I don't know if it's one of those things where they're like, okay, Terrell Bernard didn't work. Let's try to get somebody else in there. Or they want to move Bernard somewhere else, or something that they want to do. They're sensing that urgency. I'm glad they didn't go with a running back because I think the running back position is pretty much set for 2023. But I think the pick signals this. Okay, we recognize we made a mistake, and we're not going to wait for him to try to develop. We're going to replace the mistake right now. And we're going to try to get this guy in here. We're going to try to get him coached up and get him starting. And I think the first 3 picks, like I said before, are really legitimate guys that could be starting day one for the Buffalo Bills, because I think that's the different mindset that they have going into 2023. They're like, okay, you do need time on task. We do need to trust you know what you're doing out there. However, we're going to put you in the fire right away. We're not going to wait and just try to see if you're going to develop and all this other stuff, because the kid has the speed. The kid has the coverage skills. What do you need to see out of him to put him on the field as in your nickel packages for like 20 plays a game? What do you really need to see? I'm so concerned. I'm so excited to see what that's going to look like, and to see on the offensive side of the ball how that's going to look. I mean, you guys weren't here for the second round pick with Torrance, and then Paul gave us a little bit of a taste of it, and so did you, Ryan. But what do you think anything on the offensive line schematically changes? I know Paul's going to bring up Cromer, but what are some things that you see with Torrance in there? Do you see him on the left side? Do you see him on the right? Do you see is this a move where they can get Morse out of there and put Bates at center, or is McGovern now a backup? What is your take on the Torrance pick and how it affects the Bills going into camp?
Well, Torrance is a right guard, right? Okay. Like he's played right guard his entire collegiate career. So that's probably where they start him. I think that leaves flexibility with Bates and McGovern to probably compete for that left guard position. My take on it is that Bates is either going to win one of the guard positions, or he's going to be your flex backup, your super backup, for lack of a better phrase. But I think the plan is that Morse is probably gone after this season and Bates slides into your center position. That's my assumption on how this is all going to work out. And then they go into next season either having to replace Spencer Brown or having an intact offensive line that has experience playing with itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the Spencer Brown piece of this is what's so curious to me, right? Because he's just not capable of playing guard, right? Like he'll get tore up if you try to move him inside. And I know that's sort of what you do with broken tackles as you move him into guard. Darrell Williams was a product of that, right? He became a broken tackle, moved into guard. Buffalo moved him back out to tackle, and that worked for a bit. But as far as the offensive line goes, and Torrance specifically, I think Buffalo needs to just trust the fact that they picked the right guy, right? And just come with the bumps. Whatever those bumps are, you just got to take them. You got to take your lumps. You have to start. You have to start putting faith in the players that you draft, right? And that means putting them in positions to be successful. You got to get them experience. And this whole move them around thing, because remember when we lost Quentin Spain, right? Yeah. We lost Quentin Spain because he got mad that there were no preseason games and Buffalo started just putting in guys that didn't necessarily deserve to be playing. Spain's like, what the hell's going on? And then he wanted out. We just signed him to a contract extension, right? Like Quentin Spain's the reason you don't have Wyatt Teller anymore, you know? So like the Bills have played the politic game on the offensive line really, really poorly.
Hopefully they learn from the experience. Hopefully they learn from what they did with Ford, where they kept trying to find a spot for him that worked instead of just picking a spot and teaching him how to make it work.
Right.
You know, and I think Torrance is a right guard. You know, I think they stick with him there. He didn't give up a single sack his entire collegiate career. And he went all season last year without drawing a single penalty at right guard. So leave him at right guard and let him do what he does at that position, because that doesn't happen by accident, right? Like you don't go an entire collegiate career starting every game of your college career without giving up a sack because other guys around you are hiding you, right? Like he's good at right guard. Leave him there. Let him play there. Don't screw around with him. If you feel like you need a solution at right tackle, then go get one. But don't draft a guard and then try to convert him into something he's not.
I'll get it, Paul. I'll get it.
Okay.
All right. Pierre Martinez comes in. Thank you, Paul. And by the way, guys, all super chats will be going to the Williams Syndrome Foundation, hashtag charity for 2023. Pierre comes in. I'm still pissed they let Hodgins go. They replaced his skill set with Kincaid at round 1. Yeah, big body target and stuff like that. We talked about it last year when they decided to waive Hodges, and then that's when they still had Stevenson, and I think that was a miss by the brass at One Bills Drive, was the fact that they ended up doing that, and you let a quality player go, and you had to know that with Dable and Shen over in New York, your guys were going to be targeted first over anybody else's. So you had to protect some guys.
Then Hodgins should have learned how to play special teams if he was really that concerned about start playing time. Because if he could have returned kicks at like a 14.5 yard per return click like Stevenson, maybe he'd still be in Buffalo.
But all they had to do was cut Taiwan Jones. That's all they had to do. It was one day, dude. It was one freaking day. It was one day.
I mean, we were talking a little bit about. I just wanted to go back real quick to the Osiris Torrance. Apparently, he played 13 games at left guard. That's coming in from the chat. But you're right. He's a right guard, and you put him next to Spencer Brown. Hopefully, he does well. The thing that me and Joe were talking about, and Joe can comment on this as well. When we put their draft profiles next to each other, Cody Ford and Torrance, they were nearly identical. But the difference is you're not even going to flirt or even think about the idea of putting him at tackle anywhere.
Oh God, no.
That's the thing. That's the difference about it, is you put him at right guard, you leave him there, let him go. Because then we had a debate, right? Joe, did you leave him at right guard, or did you have him go to left with in between Dawkins and Morse?
I had him going left guard between Dawkins and Morse. I thought the experience would help, and yeah, he did play. I mean, it was his freshman year, so his past 2 years it's been strictly right guard. Yeah. But his freshman year he did play left guard. So, but I don't disagree with Ryan either. I mean, look what he's done at right guard. So,
exactly, yeah. Because we were trying to figure out a scenario where you put him at left guard, put him in between Dawkins and Morse. You can learn there, and you got Bates next to Brown to try to help him out. If not, and then you got McGovern to swing in for your guards if you need to. But I like the idea of having Bates as your guy that comes in. I don't know if his contract is one that is a guy that is a swing tackle or a guy that you put all over the line. But if you wanted to start McGovern and Torrance in there, I would be fine with that as well. And I had misspoke, and I told Hashtag Nation on the previous broadcast the fact that I didn't know Morse had another year on his deal. That's why I was pressing to get a center this year. And both New York teams really gave it to me on that one.
New Jersey
teams. Sorry, I apologize. Both New Jersey teams gave it to me on that.
Yeah, Morse has 3 years left, right, Paul?
2. 2024 is his last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So this year and next year.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, there's no allegiance there as far as I'm concerned, right? Like if you need to save money, because remember, cap rolls over. Whatever you don't use goes to next season, and there's going to come a point where you got Gabe Davis coming up on a contract year, and you've got Tyler Rapps on a 1-year deal, and that might go really well, like that might go. the word is that's going to go well, right? and you might need to free up some money, and maybe that's the compromise that you make. Although that's a pretty big remake of your offensive line, right? To replace the entire interior. That's a little scary. I do want to point out, I'm getting flamed in the chat. Dilly Dale and Johnny are flaming me that I'm never happy with the draft. I'm unhappy with the process of the draft. That's what I'm often unhappy with, right? It's very formulaic to me. Like you could see where Bean is just not interested in certain players, and some of it's just frustrating. That's
Guys,
all.
you get the on-screen version of Paul for the draft analysis. I get the George Carlin version of Paul off screen. There's a lot more words, but I don't know if we could say any of them.
Probably
not. It's probably not. But that being said, I mean, like I said, this draft from top to bottom for all the teams has seemed like it's had a different feel to it. There's a lot of, really, really good talent that's been flying off the board that has dropped as well. And we haven't really heard anything outside of, a few obvious cases here and there of certain players what's going on. But for the Buffalo Bills specifically, if you told a Bills fan, we always want to look big picture here, guys. If you told Buffalo Bills fan, listen, you're going to have you're going to take a receiving threat, the best pass catcher in the first round. Okay. Then you're going to get somebody that is a road grader that's going to protect Josh Allen in the second round. Sure. Okay. Then you're going to get an athletic freak coverage linebacker in the third round. Remove all the names, guys. If you went into this draft telling any Buffalo Bills fan that, I think they would be happy with that. Oh, what's the compensation to get all those? Oh, you're going to lose your fourth round pick. Okay. I think if you look at it big picture in that sense, you can have a little bit of comfort putting your head to your pillow tonight saying, okay, when the Bills go into the weekend, whoever they get, they're fifth round and above are all projects, guys. They're all projects. Those guys most of them end up on the practice squad anyway. Those are guys that, maybe missed a year because of a knee and he's coming back or some scenario like that. Probably another former team captain. Just keep that in mind. Dane Cook was a team captain. So just to make sure.
Dane Jackson.
Oh, Dane Jackson. Yeah.
Dane Cook?
I said Dane Cook. Yeah.
Mario.
I'm thinking of James Cook in my mind too, because I want to get to the running back position eventually.
Can we picture Dane Cook for a second playing
I don't want to
in the NFL? Dane Cook lined up across from Justin Jefferson.
Could we? No, we could do that. We could.
Then worse than our cornerbacks did against him last year.
I mean, Paul resembles Dorsey every once in a while, but
fuck you.
There's that George Carlin coming out.
Okay,
there it is.
Listen, damn it.
I wish that I had the freedom to smash tablets in my office when I was unhappy with the way things went. You know how good that was to see for my soul?
Yeah.
We got Superman. Jesus. All right. So that being said, Jesus, what did I want to say? I have no idea. This show's gone off the rails.
Running backs.
It's always good. No. Well, yeah. What I'm saying is, do you think that the Buffalo Bills, they have a 5th round pick and a 6th round pick? They have 2 left. Do you think will Brandon Beane acquire more draft capital, which is highly unlikely with a 5th and a 6th round pick? Do you what other positions do you think that he'll probably take a shot at in the 5th and 6th round? I want to go with Joe, Ryan, and then I'll finish up with Paul.
Well, I'm just actually, as you're talking about that, I'm looking at best available players, going down a few pages because, again, we don't have a 4th round pick tomorrow. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go safety and wide receiver whatever order, I'm not sure. But I see later on here, there are a few safeties on the board. Like there looks like there might be a run at safeties late. I'm looking at Jay Ward. I'm looking at Jamie Robinson. Those type of guys. Connor's in there. So safety and wide receiver for me is probably, again, whatever order that would be.
Okay, Ryan, what do you got? The Bills taking a shot at in the 5th and 6th round, but keep in mind we got 5th and 6th rounders, guys. Matt Milano, Wyatt Teller, Siran Neal, Jaquan Johnson, Tyler Bass, DeMar Hamlin. I'm not naming all of them, obviously, and Khalil Shakir. Those are recent fifth or sixth round picks that the Bills have had. So a couple guys in there that have played before, a couple guys that are misses. So, going ahead, fifth and sixth round, Ryan, who you got the Bills taking a shot at?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like probably a project on the offensive line. I mean, I know a guy that a lot of Bills fans have kind of been clamoring for on Twitter and stuff. DeJuan Jones, I think, makes a lot of sense if he's still there. For some reason, he seems to be slipping down a little bit. And then probably a prospect at the defensive line position. I'm not sure what that looks like. Keep in mind, that their pick in the 5th round is the Arizona pick. So they only have 40 picks before they're on the clock again. So it's not like they're going 2 full rounds before they have to take somebody. So, I would like to see some type of insurance policy for Spencer Brown. Because you don't want to have to address that position with a rookie next year. You'd like to maybe take, again, maybe it's DeJuan Jones, figure out in the off season where he fits. Hopefully he's good enough to kind of hang around and learn and maybe step in for Spencer Brown if things go really badly. But they've got to get an insurance policy there. And then defensive tackle position, I talked about that earlier. They've got one guy under contract after this year, so they have to get younger at that position, because Settle and Jones and those guys that are probably up for some type of a contract. You don't want to have to overpay them just to get them to stick around at the productivity that they've got. So those are the 2 positions that I'd probably like to see them shore up a little bit and just get a little bit more depth.
Gotcha.
You ready, Mar?
Here we freaking go.
All right.
Yeah.
So Buffalo, of course, Buffalo is a type, right? And since there's no remaining Washington State cornerbacks that I can look at and say that the Bills are going to draft, because Paul definitely has a soft spot in his heart for Washington corners. I still think Buffalo's got to get. I agree with Ryan as far as defensive tackles. The problem with defensive tackles late in the draft is you get usually big projects, right? The interior defensive line was pretty well drafted already, right? For the guys that you could kind of earmark as maybe giving some depth. So you're probably taking some real big red flag guys in the undrafted free agency pool. I think Buffalo's probably going to be comfortable doing that. But when Buffalo finds a system that fits well for them, they kind of go to the well a few times. So Brandon Hill, safety from Pittsburgh, man, listen, that Pitt fits well in your system. Right, you had Damar Hamlin. You expect Damar Hamlin to be back, although he's cleared for football. Dane Jackson obviously fit in your system, so I think that's something that Buffalo has a tendency to do. Is once they find a system that works, they kind of go to the well, maybe a little too much. Brandon Hill, I definitely think will be around late, and again, Buffalo might not think they have a need at wide receiver. I don't know why they wouldn't think that, but I don't know if they know that they need some help at the wide receiver position. And because of that, right, it's every year they take a corner. It is just it just seems like no matter what, they're just taking a corner every year. And since there's no left-handed punters in this draft, I do think they blow a late round pick on a corner. So
can we talk about the 49ers drafting a kicker in the 3rd round?
Why not? Why not?
I mean, why? Counterpoint, why?
Counterpoint. Do you know how many kickers are out there that you could just pick up in free agency? Yeah. Like, did you think someone was going to skip you and pick them?
Yeah, I don't know why you'd want a 4-year contract on a kicker.
Did you lose a bet?
Like, let's just. We did it with Bass. We did it with Bass, and Bass is coming up in a contract.
Yeah, but he was a 6th rounder.
I know.
I understand, in their tenure, the Bills have drafted a kicker and a punter. And how come nobody's talking about that? Seriously? But just, echo a few names, Austin Prohl, Tommy Sweeney, Daryl Johnson, Dane Jackson, Jack Anderson, and Balin Spector have all been 7th rounders, which the Buffalo Bills do not have this year because of I believe it was the Dean Marlowe trade to Atlanta. I think they sent a 7th rounder to Atlanta.
Yeah,
so
I think that's right.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
But yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. They do have a type, and they do have especially a type of a player that they want, or a specific type of school they like to go to, Paul, like Pittsburgh. I think that they go for guys that in the 5th and 6th round, which are always going to be projects, but they're guys that I'm not picking a specific position. I'm just picking that their RAS score is going to be up there pretty high. Like you're going to see a guy with like an 8.5, 9 RAS score, but like has had 2 blown knees out, and nobody wants to take a draft pick on him. You know, they're projects that they're going to have, especially with that. But Paul brings up a great point earlier. You know, they could talk to guys that could be 7th round picks and say, hey, if you're not drafted in the 7th round by somebody else, we want to bring you in. We want to, you know, your roster's at 90. Here's what we want. And if you get a call from the Bills, which is foreign territory for a lot of us, but we need to get used to this. The Bills are a destination for a lot of players. And if you're on the Bills, you're going to get seen by a lot of teams. And if the Bills want to pick you up, especially if you're a corner, a lot of other teams are going to want to pick you up because you're a corner on the Bills. I mean, Levi Wallace has a starting – he was a free agent. He's got a starting job in Pittsburgh. So that being said, do we miss anything tonight, guys? Are we
no, I think that's
good?
it. I think that's it. It's not going to be an exciting day tomorrow. You know, like draft starts at noon Eastern Standard Time, I believe. And it's not an exciting day for Buffalo. You really don't have any leverage to move around. You've only got 2 picks, right? So I think you're probably just settling where you are, and you just let the board come to you at that point, you know. So it's going to be it's just not going to be super exciting as a Bills fan, and that's okay. You paid to not have Saturday be exciting, you know, with the trades that you had made. That was the price of admission this year. So I still look forward to it, but you know, I don't know. I understand everybody's apprehension. I get it.
Yeah. Unless the Cardinals blink, then decide to finally move Hopkins.
Oh,
I think
that would be so weird.
Happen. 6th. Like I just don't know.
I don't think it's going to happen. You know, Ryan's just saying this because he's trying to bait me into the salary cap as a myth thing. So Ryan's just trying to bait me here. Oh,
Aaron Rodgers is owed over $100 million next year.
Yeah,
salary cap is a myth.
Let's look at it. Hold on. So,
oh God, here we go.
Well, in age 31, DeAndre Hopkins, that feels good. 19.4 mil is his base salary, right? So Arizona's going to have to eat 20 to trade him. I have to imagine that he would have to renegotiate his contract for them to eat more than that. Because you can't get Buffalo can't fit him at 19
right out of the gate. Yeah, they have to renegotiate right out of the gate.
Yeah, because the league won't approve the trade with the salary that high.
Cap.
Yeah, if you don't have the cap, so they would have to renegotiate. But I mean, you're talking a huge renegotiation. I mean, you're probably talking an extension of at least 2 years with probably 2 voided years on the backside of that to fit getting what do you got, $5 million to work with if you're Buffalo. Like, you don't have a lot of room here because you can't free up space with somebody like Taron Johnson. You can't cut him to free up space, right? You can't do anything with Morris to free up space. For the most part, you could save like $3 million if you cut Morris. I think those are too big of moves. You look at the rest of their roster, there's no value there. They've already restructured everybody they can restructure for the most part.
Counterpoint. I really want to see DeAndre Hopkins play opposite of Stephon Diggs.
I understand that. I understand that.
We'll wait till the flag.
And if all of this like happens, and you're like, well, he's 31 years old, and we got it now. It's a 5-year contract because of the void years, yada yada. Mm-hmm. If you get a ring out of it, I don't give a good goddamn.
That's true.
You have to have DeAndre Hopkins trotting out there and running routes at the age of 40. So I don't care.
You want the Howie Roseman school of GMing? Is that what you want? Where you put 4 voidable years on everybody's contract in order to spread out the
sure
gap.
It's not my money. I don't give a shit.
Whatever takes to get a ring. I'm with Ryan. Listen, we've now dealt with a good period of we're in the conversation every year. Like whoopty shit. If it doesn't get you anything, who cares?
The thought of having somebody like D Hop's catch radius with Allen is intriguing, right? I don't know if it's $19.4 million intriguing. I don't know about that.
Super Bowl ring is that intriguing though.
I know. I get it, right? I understand.
Stop being rational. Stop.
At 29-year-old DeAndre Hopkins, I will give you my wallet, take whatever money I got, right? But a 31 DeAndre, I don't know, man.
He's got enough for a 12-pack of Dr. Tops, guys. Don't worry about it. But this has turned into a roast session. I'm roasting you all day tonight.
I do want to explore. We don't have to do it tonight, but I do want to explore more, Paul, with because I think Spin brings up a good point. What does it look like if you include Oliver going back for Hopkins?
Yeah,
you probably have to get more than just Hopkins. You'd have to get more than just Hopkins coming back.
Well, I don't think so. I think that's a salary dump, right? If you're really looking at it, I think that's just a pure.
Yeah, but I mean, just talent wise, right? Like talent wise, it's not. They're no longer a linear type of trade.
But he's on a 1-year deal, right?
Yeah, true. I mean, they're going to have to re-sign him. But
right.
if it's that, or we're going to let Hopkins walk next year anyway because of his contract, like, they're both on 1-year deals at this point.
Right. That's true.
So, and then the question is, how old is OBJ? Because Hopkins is looking over at the deal that he got with Baltimore. So you got to take that into effect too. What is OBJ?
OBJ avoidable years to a 1-year contract.
Right. That was that. If you guys want a nice little exercise, go to overthecap.com and look at OBJ's contract.
Oh, what a joke.
You get to see all the avoidable years. They're paying him till he's 36, and he's gonna be on the. It's like
I mean Beckham's 2 years younger. So
listen, guys, they just put fresh tires on that car. Two new knees. He's ready to go. It's like RoboCop just came out of the garage, man. He is ready to go.
Yeah, guys, just a heads up, especially now with the draft and a lot of these guys that are going to be free agents right after the draft. Trading an undersized defensive tackle holds very little to no value, especially when they have 1 year left, and the team that's trading them doesn't have to eat any cap. It's not advisable for any of the 31 other teams to try to do that. They would just either get an undersized defensive tackle in the draft or get sign a free agent that doesn't cost $10 million. And Oliver hasn't put out the kind of production that warrants somebody wanting to trade for that 1 year deal to renegotiate it themselves.
Yeah, I think admittedly at Oliver on $10 million 5th year option is $6 million overpaid. Like I agree. That's just the way the money works, right? He's fortunate he's on the 5th year option, right? Yeah. Like he's fortunate he's on the 5th, but
yeah. Okay, guys, for Ryan, Paul, and Joe, I am Mario. Make sure you hit up all of our socials, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All of our episodes will go to iTunes and Spotify. Tonight's show is sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes. 2023 charity for #sports is the Williams Syndrome Foundation. All the super chats will be going to that foundation, so thank you so much. Buffalo Bills have 3 picks in the books. They don't have a 4th rounder, but they do have a 5th and 6th. Make sure you check out #sports for more content that we're going to have, and Ryan trying to goad Paul into something. So
I'll get him one of these days. Just have me on more. I'll put him on tilt.
Make sure you smash that like button and that subscribe on the way out. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are out of here.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth, and right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona? Please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions so we can take the next step to your financial freedom here in the Valley of the Sun, utilizing real estate. As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!